Jeb Bush served as the 43rd governor of Florida from 1999 to 2007. During his years as governor, he reduced taxes, cut the size of state government, and improved Florida's bond rating. Please join me in welcoming Governor Jeb Bush.
I've had a blast these last 24 hours in New Hampshire. You all know how to be a magnet for candidates. There's only 55 people that are thinking about running for president. That's what I can tell. I believe we're probably going to be an economic driver for creating high-wage jobs for New Hampshire, for which I want to play my part as well today. So thank you for letting me come. Everybody knows me as George's boy, Barbara's boy, W's brother. I have some other family members, but if I'm going to go beyond the consideration of running for the highest office in the land, I need to share my heart to show a little bit about my life experience. For those that have family members, I think you can appreciate this. We're not always like our brother or sister or mom and dad. We all have our own unique DNA and our own life experiences. And while I'm blessed when I woke up in Midland, Texas, and my little eyes opened up and there she was, the greatest mom that anybody could ever imagine. I didn't know at the time, but I'm not a big gambler, but it turns out I won the lottery. And I wish that everybody would have the kind of upbringing I had of two decent, beautiful parents that loved me with all their heart and soul. My transformation began in many ways when I was in León, Guanajuato, Mexico, at the age of 17, on a Sunday afternoon where I met my wife. Literally, she was in a car. I was sitting in the town square, and our eyes met, and I fell madly in love with her. It was love at first sight. For the young guys here, it does happen. Trust me. It happens, and my life was organized in a way that I cannot describe to you from there on in. It wasn't love at first sight for my wife, sadly. In fact, it took her a couple of years to get going. Some of you may have had that experience. But she finally consented, and we've been together now 41 years. We got married in Austin, Texas. I had just turned 21, she was 20, and I got out of the University of Texas in 2.5 years and started my life's journey with her. And it's been a great ride. We lived in Venezuela for 2 years, we moved back, I worked in my dad's campaign, and I started my life in Miami as a business person. Before I forgot to mention 3 other important people, and those are my 3 kids. Jeb was my business partner. He lives in Miami. He has 2 great granddaughters and a wonderful wife. My daughter Noelle lives in Orlando. And my son George P., some of you may know him, is a statewide elected official in Texas. I'm incredibly proud of he and Mandy because they actually brought a baby into the world, Jack, 4 days ago. So as I begin to think about this journey, I think about little Georgia, little Vivi, little P, we call them, Prescott, and Jack. What's the world going to look like for them? Is it going to be a world of abundance and purpose, or is it going to be a world of great insecurity and fear, where people feel compelled to not dream the biggest possible dreams, where they sit back and wonder what it's like, and that uncertainty makes it harder for all of us to rise up? My personal belief is that we have a chance to make it the greatest time to be alive as Americans. My son, by the way, also served. He volunteered at the age of 30 to serve in the Naval Reserves. He was an intelligence officer and served in Afghanistan. And I'm proud of all of his life, but I'm particularly proud of that. And I'm proud of the men and women here in New Hampshire and across the country that have served our country to keep us free. And it's an obligation, I think, for all of us to pay our respects for them with the best care that they deserve in our Veterans Department, and also honor them by keeping America strong so that their sacrifice was not in vain. I did something when I started my life's journey as an adult that's kind of unusual. I actually learned how to sign the front side of a paycheck. I built a business with my friend Armando Codina, and Lord, it started with 3 people, and we built it into the largest full-service commercial real estate company in South Florida. It got up to about 260 to 280 people. It doesn't work the way the progressive liberals in Washington make you want to believe, that we just have to kind of march one step forward, back and forth, do what you're told. That's not America. America looks like the life journey of many people in this room. It's dynamic, where you take risks, where it doesn't always work out, where you may have a failure, but you dust yourself off. And the interaction of all of us in the pursuit of our own unique dreams in a free society has created the greatness of this society, not the top-down driven approach of the liberals. And I've learned it by doing it. And I think it's important. In fact, if I had to pick the one thing that I value the most in my life experience that makes me feel confident that the future of this country is bright, is the exact thing I said, which is signing the front side of a paycheck, growing jobs, having the challenges that exist in the real world. I got to be governor of the state of Florida. Some of you may know. Some of you secretly go down there in January and February. I know, I've seen you. I've seen you on the streets of Miami and Tampa and other places. It's an incredible state. It's big, it's dynamic, it's kind of wacky, it's kind of crazy. It's definitely purple. It is definitely purple. And it's a state where I got to apply conservative principles in a way that moved the needle for people to have a chance for a better life. I did it with diligence, I did it with passion, I did it with conviction, and the state is better off because we shifted towards a conservative philosophy, not just talking about it, we did it. In Florida, when I was governor, I said that we needed to cut taxes rather than raise taxes. We never raised taxes during my 8 years. We cut taxes every year. $19 billion of cumulative tax cuts back into the pockets of people that then could pursue their dreams as they see fit. We reduced the state government workforce by 13,000 people, more than 10%. Not many states can make that claim, particularly a state that was growing at the pace of the United States of Florida. We rebuilt our reserves. This sounds like a nerdy thing, I guess, but reserving for a rainy day is what conservatives do. Spending money you don't have is what liberals do. And in Florida, we reserved for a rainy day, and we started with $1 billion of reserves, and when I left, we had $9.5 billion of cash reserves. The net result, by the way, was during that 8 years, we were the only state that went from AA to AAA bond rating. It used to be that the bond rating agencies would look at states and say, you have to tax everything. Tax have an excuse me for living tax. Tax the air you breathe tax. Taxes, the broad-based tax code was the one that would generate the most solvent kind of state. We went to the bond rating agencies and said, no. What we need is a dynamic state of limited government where the economy grows, where personal income grows faster than the size and scope of government, and in doing so, you create a more solvent state. And they rewarded us, the only state to go up to AAA bond rating. We took on the trial bar. If anybody's tried that, that's a big challenge. The plaintiff's bar is in most places very powerful. We took them on to bring a balanced approach to our tort system, so the uncertainty of business was made better. We did something that was important. I don't know how it is here in New Hampshire, but in Florida we had the second highest premiums for workers' compensation. It was a huge driver for lessening the opportunities of job growth. We reformed it by taking on those that were making a lot of money off the system, and we created $400 million a year of reductions in premiums. And I guarantee you that money went into the pockets of small business and then out so that their businesses could expand and jobs were created. I was called Vito Corleone. Actually, I was called a lot of things, particularly by the left in my state. They didn't quite agree with everything that we did. But I was called Vito Corleone because I vetoed 2,500 separate line items in the budget, totaling $2 billion to bring order to a budget process that allowed for personal income to grow at about 4.5% and government income to grow at about 2.5%. And the net result was that we created 1.3 million net new jobs in Florida during my 8 years, the business folks in this state, in Florida. 1.3 million, second only to California, and for 5 out of those 8 years, we led the nation in job growth. We did other things as well. We eliminated affirmative action by executive order and replaced it with a leadership model that did not discriminate based on race, but applied leadership principles to allow for more minority students that were qualified to attend our universities. And during my 8 years, more Hispanics and more African Americans attended our universities, but we did not use a policy that discriminated from one group against the other. We affirmed and expanded Second Amendment rights, gun rights in our state. And I think if you look at the record, Florida is a model for those that believe in the protection of the Second Amendment. We defended the sanctity of life from beginning to end in our state, and we reformed the things that are most important. My set of values believes that the most vulnerable in our society should be in the front of the line, not in the back of the line. And Republicans, I think, do better when we show our consciousness to do the exact same, whether it's the developmentally disabled or a child welfare system or the people that are struggling. We should give them our attention and help and reform the systems to make sure that they have a better chance to rise up. And in Florida, I do believe that more and more people had a chance to rise up because we reformed our education system like nobody's business. In Florida, we were languishing near the bottom or at the bottom. In fact, we were 50th in graduation rate when I started this journey. And by expanding school choice, the most dramatic expansion of any state in the country, we were the first state with a statewide voucher program. We expanded the corporate tax scholarship program that has begun here with a baby step. We have 70,000 students that are taking advantage of that. We're the first state to have a voucher program for kids that have learning disabilities where their parents can send their kids to private options. We have the largest number of students attending virtual school in the country. We eliminated social promotion in third grade. That may not sound like a big deal, but it is an insidious policy in our country. It is shameful that we have a policy that says a third grader going to fourth grade, it's okay that they're functionally illiterate. Moms know this and dads know this, that if you can't read by the end of third grade, you're not going to acquire knowledge. And in most places, we don't have the courage to take on the teachers' union and the bureaucracies, both focused on the economic interest of the adults rather than moving to a child-centered system where their God-given abilities can learn. And the net result of turning the system upside down with high standards, with robust accountability, with accurate assessments, with school choice, was that Florida has been the leader in terms of learning gains in the United States of America. And I'm proud of that. It's not that Washington's going to be the place where the next president ends up being the head of a school board. That's not what I'm advocating. God forbid that would happen. But it is important, rather than just talking about things, I think it's important to look at people's records. What have they done in their lives? Have they moved the needle? Have they had the courage of their convictions? Have they focused on making sure that everybody has a chance to rise up? Because we're moving into a world, we're at an intersection today where we're either going to be in decline because we refuse to change the things that are broken, or we're on the verge of the greatest time to be alive. If you think about it, today, we're challenged. We're in the 6th year of recovery, but a majority of Americans believe that we're still in a recession, and they are. We're in the 6th year of a recovery, but business startup rates are lower than business failure rates, and that's a challenge. We're in the 6th year of a so-called recovery, and workforce participation rates and business participation rates, business startup rates, are lower than they were in 1980. I know we can do better. In fact, it has to be done better, and we can do better. But it requires the kind of leadership to create a strategy of high sustained economic growth where more and more and more people have a chance at earned success. That's how we will win. We will win if we offer a compelling, hopeful alternative, grounded in principle, using applied common sense leadership to be able to fix things. We're in the verge where my little boy Jack, my 4-day-old Jack, is going to live till he's 130 years old. Your kids and grandkids are going to as well. We're on the verge of discovering of cures of diseases, using life science in a way that just defies our imagination. Every sector of our economy is being transformed through disruptive technologies and innovation. The question that we have in front of us is, are we capable of making disruption our friend, or will it overwhelm us? And that requires the leadership to fix a few big, complex things. None of this is going to be possible. None of this will be possible unless we restore a sense of security in the lives of Americans. A sense of security that is based on American leadership in the world. This is the first president in the post-World War II era that does not believe that America's presence in the world as a leader and America's power in the world is a force for good. I do, and I hope you do as well. We need to re-nourish the alliances that have kept us safe. We need a president that does not disrespect our friends like Israel and tries to cater to our enemies like Iran. We need a president that doesn't unilaterally give away things, but negotiates based on principle and strength, and is engaged where our friends know that we have their back, not just today, but over the long haul, and our enemies fear us again. That's how you create a more secure and stable world. And so if we do those two things, if we grow our economy at a rate where people no longer believe that the end is near, that their children will have more opportunities than they have, that they're willing to take risks again, and that we build capacity so that everybody has a chance to achieve earned success, and that we advocate a strong America, a presence in the world that creates greater security than what we have today, this will be the greatest time to be alive. And I hope you agree with that, and I hope you will support candidates and people that have this hopeful, optimistic vision, because that's how we're going to win as well. I know for a fact we will not win if we just complain about how bad things are. What we have to do is be principled in our opposition for the status quo for sure, but we also have to offer a compelling alternative so that more and more and more people join us in our cause. Thank you all very much. Thanks for listening. This guy's clearly in charge. Clearly, I don't have to worry about this.
I have the clipboard.
I think I might move over here just in case. Yes, sir.
Today.
Perfect.
Not on, oh, there it is. You have a wonderful family. Let me just say that first of all. You should be very, very proud of the service that your family is doing. That being said,
I got that. I thought there was a comment after that statement.
That being said, what concerns me and a lot of Republicans for your candidacy is, number one, we're obviously talking a lot about stop Hillary, because essentially the Democratic Party is having a coronation and there's no competition. What concerns me is that it seems a little bit like the establishment obviously is backing you as the candidate, and we have a lot of viable candidates, and I hope that there is more of a fight amongst, not a fight literally, but spirited debate amongst all the Republicans, and may the best man or woman win and be the candidate. So I don't want a coronation on our side by any stretch of the imagination.
I don't see any coronation coming my way, trust me.
Well, I'm glad you feel like that. I hope you feel like an underdog.
People possibly running for president. I'm really intimidating a whole bunch of folks, aren't I?
But I think after the last couple of elections, a lot of us are not looking for a Republican in name only, and somebody that claims to be a conservative. And when I say a conservative, I mean a free marketer, someone who believes in capitalism. I'm just hoping that your candidacy and your platform is going to be more not trying to appeal to everybody and please everybody and end up pleasing no one. Can you comment on that?
Yeah. Thanks. I can comment on that. Well, first of all, I hope you absorb the record. It's a record. It's a conservative record. It's not a Republican in name only record. The funny thing is, in Florida, those that are on the left are really upset that people are calling me something I'm not. It's kind of amusing. The liberals in Florida are angry that people don't see me as a conservative outside of Florida. Well, my record is a conservative one. I'm not kidding, conservative one, and it's a record of accomplishment. I did it. I didn't talk about it. Because I was in an era where perhaps you could do more things, and we need to restore that in Washington, D.C. We need to stop arguing about what we want to do and start doing it, which means we have to win. So back to the question at hand here. I will have to earn it if I get into the arena. I'll have to earn it. No one's going to give it to me. That is more than apparent. I'll share my heart. I'll share my ideas to help people move up. And I'll share my record because that is the leading indicator of what I could do in the future in terms of leadership. I think one of the differences for the presidency than other positions is that someone sitting behind that big desk has to make decisions. You can't just be an empty slate. We have elected a president who was a phenomenal speaker, but he was 2 years as a United States Senator and had no record of accomplishment, and before that was a state senator with very little record of accomplishment. And what did we get? We got the most liberal president in modern history, and so I hope that I'll be able to share the belief that accomplishment matters, that leadership matters, that who sits behind the big desk as it relates to the presidency is different than perhaps the United States Senator or another job. So I appreciate what you're saying, and I'm going to work hard to earn your support if I get in the arena.
Hello, Governor. I'm a young Republican, and I find that most young Republicans, and polling data backs this up, are supportive now of same-sex marriage, as opposed to the older generation of the Republican Party.
Yeah.
And I'm seeing this as an issue that's going forward, divide the party more and more. So I just want to get your thoughts on that, the change in the culture of the country, and how, what do you think is going to happen going forward?
Well, I think everybody's waiting for a Supreme Court decision that may change the dynamics of this. I'm for traditional marriage. I believe that this is a view, to be fair about it, this is a view that transcends politics. This is not a well-focused group and you poll it and all this stuff. This is informed by my faith. And the architecture of my life isn't driven by politics, it's driven by my faith. And traditional marriage has been part of the glue that has kept our society intact. Now, having said that, I have no animus in my heart. I have no hatred or no bitterness in my heart for people that have a different view. If I get involved in this, it will be about how do we restore high sustained economic growth for our country. And that will benefit everybody, irrespective of whether they agree with me on a particular view. How do we create a more secure America again for our children and grandchildren so people can believe again that they're safe and free? So while I may disagree with you on that subject, I think that we need to be finding ways to unite behind broader issues where there's broader support.
Woman in the back with the pink. White hair. Yes, ma'am.
Good.
Thank you. The pink with white. That's good. Good description. Linda Twombly from Nashua. Governor Bush, where do you stand on Common Core?
Thank you for bringing that up. If it wasn't going to be brought up, I was going to bring it up myself. So here's what I'm for. I'm for fixing a simple fact that will make it harder and harder for us to be successful as a nation. We have an 80% graduation rate in high school, after spending more per student than any country in the world other than Liechtenstein, I think, or Luxembourg and a couple other small countries. and yet less than half of those students are college or career ready. Think about that for a second. Think about how dreams are shattered because we've dumbed down everything. We have low expectations for every child, and then we excuse it away because of life circumstances. In Florida, that's what happened. In Florida, we had what my brother called the soft bigotry of low expectations. And so I'm for raising standards so that if you assess them and you're assessing them accurately, it means that we have college or career readiness. Whether it is Common Core, which are higher standards than all but a handful of states, or standards created at the state level, to me is not as meaningful as the fact they should be higher. High standards assessed the right way, combined with real accountability, is what we need. Here's what we don't need. We don't need a federal government involved in this at all. We don't need Lamar Alexander and his counterpart, actually a Democrat, have just passed out of committee the reauthorization of the K-12 law, and in that provision, with my total support and encouragement, they have provisions that say the federal government should not be involved in the creation, indirectly or directly, in the creation of standards, of curriculum, and of content. And that's exactly the proper place for the federal government, to stay completely out of this. But that means that states and local communities have an obligation to raise the bar up. The cost of this for our society is just daunting. If we're just going to say, well, some kids are going to learn and some kids can't, and that's just the way it is, we're going to create social disruptions, the likes of which we've gone through in the last few months, and we've seen it, we've seen what happens. It'll be bigger and bigger and bigger. For us as conservatives, we need to challenge the orthodoxy of our times that basically is focused on 13,000 government-run, unionized, politicized school districts focused on the economic interests of the adults and that allows children to languish. We should not tolerate this. God has given the ability of every child to learn, and we should organize ourselves in far better ways to make sure that they do.
Yes, Renee Plummer, Portsmouth, New Hampshire. Governor, tell us who you got along with on the other side. What Democrats did you work well with? Because if you're going to be president, I want to know that the President of the United States works with everybody.
Sure. Well, I work in Washington. I don't thankfully have a whole lot of experience in the ways of Washington, so the contagion hasn't spread to my body, I guess. But in Washington, I have, Governor Manchin, who served when I was governor, is a great guy, and we have a solid relationship. Tom Vilsack was a governor, and we had a good relationship. In fact, Mitch Daniels and myself and those two governors traveled to Iraq and Afghanistan to see our troops. We had 2,500 National Guardsmen in Afghanistan training the National Police, and so we developed good personal relationships. This is not as hard as it appears. I mean, this is what presidents have done since the beginning of time. It's you develop trust first. You don't assume that the person that doesn't agree with you, they may be wrong, and you may disagree with them, but do it with civility. It's not that their motives are bad. It's just that they have bad ideas. That's the attitude you start with. You have to rebuild trust. This is where I think the president has let us down more than any other thing. Put aside his rigid ideology and all this. It's pushing down people that disagree with him to make himself look better. The next president has to reverse that. Is to rebuild personal trust and not assume that everybody has bad motive. My experience is the opposite. My experience is most people in public life have a view about this, that they care about the country, they want to move forward, and we just have to assume that that's the case and then argue out where they're wrong and where we might be able to move and to begin to forge consensus. Because you're absolutely right. If we just keep arguing with the most complicated tax code in the world, with the most bizarre regulatory system now in the world, with an entitlement system that will explode into our lives where every young person in this room won't be able to receive the benefits and will pay for the sins of the past, where we don't embrace fix a broken immigration system, or where we do nothing to embrace this energy revolution in our midst. If we just let this stuff languish, we're going to be in decline. And so I think it's important now to move beyond the fight towards forging consensus. And my experience in Florida, we strategically thought that way. We didn't, there were a lot of times where we just won. We won the argument, but I think the first instinct is to try to find support from the other side. It ought to be the first instinct every time.
And this young man has the last question.
Sean Gingrey, New England College.
Yes, sir.
Governor, I'd like to ask you, what do you feel about President Obama's plan to normalize relations with Cuba?
The question is the normalization of relations with Cuba. I don't agree with the way he's doing it. I didn't agree with the fact that he did it in secrecy. I don't agree. He can't do the complete normalization because it's an embargo that is legislatively driven. I don't agree on how he negotiated, basically making unilateral concessions for our country with nothing in return. And I think the objective ought to be that we do what we should do, which is to say, here are the things that would change our relationship with you. More freedom, release the political prisoners, allow for elections, allow for the startup of more businesses, do the things necessary, freedom of movement, freedom of religion, the things that we know will move Cuba towards freedom, and then also recognize that until you release the terrorists that you're holding, whether they're the ETA boss terrorists or the cop killers here in the United States that have found refuge there, that until you disavow terrorism in general, we can't open up relationships. Had we done that, let me tell you what would have happened. Had we shown enough restraint and made it clear what our objectives were, which is the freedom of the island, and we didn't give things away before eliminating our leverage, Cuba would be in a seriously different place right now because the main sponsor outside of our own currency, hard currency that goes into Cuba from people that are traveling, the main benefit that Cuba gets is from subsidized oil from Venezuela. And trust me, $45 to $50 a barrel oil is about ready to make Venezuela a completely different country that won't allow them to provide support for Cuba. That would have created a much better climate for negotiations than just unilaterally doing this and believing somehow that the sheer force of the guy's personality or the sheer force of this happening, that somehow there'll be a transformation. Despots don't go quietly into the night.